Good afternoon and welcome to Jeff and the Rabbi. Topic today, obviously, with what's going on in the news, we're going to talk a little bit about the Middle East, a little bit about the crisis there, what's going on, and more likely, is this a religious war that's going on there? I got different opinions on that, but is it a religious war? If it is, how do the Muslims fight a religious war differently than the Jews fight a religious war? Right. And I was thinking about it a little bit. I think with the Muslims, if you look at about how they fight a religious war, just to break it down, it's kind of like the old Crusades, the way the Christians fought the Crusades. You go in there, and if you're not Muslim, you die. So you got to be Muslim, and if you're not, and not just do you die if you're not Muslim, but you gotta live by the Muslim faith. You got to have a good stoning every weekend. You got to do all the Sharia law. You got to do what you got to do, and if not,
I think that they're actually not allowed to let infidels live once a country has been proclaimed a Muslim country.
Right.
They're not allowed to let any infidels live in that country.
And by infidels, I think you mean us.
Anyone that's not them.
Anyone that's not them. Okay. So I guess it's a pretty simple, easy slate of what a religious war is for an Arab. Now, for a Jew, he's a little more complicated. We got one of these things, and we're not really out there recruiting. Mm-hmm. We don't really want. We're kind of an exclusive club here. We're not really looking to bring anybody else into it. So thinking a little bit of what's a religious war for a Jew, I think probably some of the closest things are. I'll give you an example. You got a rabbi out there. The rabbi, it's more of a intro war, I guess is what we would call this. You got a rabbi out there who says and proclaims, I think my Rebbitzin, Rivka, should be, in the congregation, I think she should dress modestly. I think she should probably not have any physical contact with the other men in the shul, and I just think that's the way it should be. Where you have another rabbi, and this rabbi says, I think my Rebbitzin, Jim, should have, should be able to shake everybody's hands in the conversation, except maybe that hunky guy in the back row that's always making the eyes at him. Maybe not him, but other than that, I think that's probably the closest we come to a religious war within Jews. We fight internally, and it's a loud war, but that's probably as close as we come. I don't know if you agree or disagree.
Right. Well, we do have wars. We have a lot of internal wars.
But we're not fighting anybody else. Now, we fight for other reasons, but not for religion, I don't think. That's just my opinion.
And I think that's kind of an interesting twist.
What, the Jim part? Or the no.
I think that there's been a little bit of a sea change here.
Okay.
Things are going a little bit different this time.
Right.
Than they have in the past, although it might not seem that way. But to people that keep their ears really open to this and kind of clued in, and I've got a lot of people over there, and I've got a nephew and a nephew-in-law who are both in the army right now, and who both are waiting outside of Gaza for orders to move in, and of course they've got lots of families scattered around the country who are running back and forth between bomb shelters and all that type of upset, and we've kind of seen this before, but there's something a little bit different happening. See, usually Israel is been in a defensive posture in that it always, say something happens, missiles or something like that, and Israel's going to go in and clean out the bad guys. And the truth is, Israel is not really interested in killing all these people off, because probably if it was, it could just, barrage the country.
It'd be pretty easy for Israel to do this.
Yeah, I think it could be done by dinner tonight.
Right, I think so.
And it'd be pretty easy, and they could, the whole thing would be, by the time the world got around to convening a session at the UN to protest it, it'd be all over.
Well, why is Israel not into that? It's obviously very clear that that's what the Arabs are into, so I don't get it.
Right, so clearly Israel is not interested in that, and they're doing all of this bomb knocking or something like that. Like they, I forget what it's called, something like that.
Well, they call them up on their cell phones. You need to get out. That kind of stuff.
Or they drop a bomb on a building, but it's not an explosive bomb. It just makes a big noise.
Right.
And if it hits your building, then that's telling you the real one's coming next.
I didn't even know that. Okay,
So this is what they do. So they and everyone was supposed to run out of the building. As a matter of fact, they had one where it kind of backfired, because they did one of these bomb knocks, which is basically that they knock on the door like we're coming
right out,
and everyone runs. So everyone ran out of the building. So they shot a missile at the building. Well, they had intended to shoot 2 missiles at the building. They shot a missile at the building. It hit the building. It caused some damage. the people who ran out of the building thought, okay, the missile came and hit the building. So they all came running back to the building to go check out the building because they thought, okay. What they didn't realize was that the main missile was coming and had already been launched, and about the time they got back to the building, the main missile hit the building and took the whole thing out, including all the people who came back to the building and all that. Okay, things like that happen, and that's, part of the tragedy.
For some reason, it doesn't remind me of like the bombing of Dresden, where we came in and just firebombed the entire city of Dresden, Germany, and just took it out. It's very not similar.
Miles away, we're sucked in.
Right, just from the heat.
There was like a vacuum that people who are miles away were into the whole thing.
A little bit of policy, I think the Jews have versus everyone else.
So why are the Jews doing this? Where's this whole thing come from? And the Jews do this differently. Jews do this in general differently. They're in the book of Joshua. Famous story, I may have even mentioned it here once before. Joshua is commanded to go into Israel, wipe out everyone who's in there, and take over the country. Now, by the way, the rules, everyone says Joshua is supposed to wipe out the whole country. It's not exactly like that. Joshua was told that when a Jewish army approaches a city that's under siege, to offer it the peace option. Okay. And as a matter of fact, you're only supposed to surround a city on 3 sides.
Give them a chance.
Fourth way to get out. So you surround them on 3 sides. A, they can run away. Or B, they can surrender. If they want to surrender, then they'll pay tribute, tax, whatever it is. You can stay. You got to just follow the rules and pay your taxes. That's what we allow. We're not looking to kill off all these people. If they want to fight, okay, then you're going to get a fight, and then everyone goes. Everyone, because everyone is considered to be a combatant at that point. You can't just say, well, only the men, not the women and children. Everyone's a combatant. But you do first give them the peace option. You can leave. Secondly, you give them a chance always to escape.
Right.
But if not, then you go in and you do war. So there was a group of people came to Joshua, and they came in. They looked like they had traveled from far away. They dressed up. They had dust all over them and traveled. Right. Joshua said, "Who are you guys?" So he said, "We come from a faraway country. We heard about the Jews. We love you. We're here to give tribute to you and to make a peace treaty." Right. So Joshua said, "Well, that's very nice of you. Okay, where do you live?" He said, "Well, faraway country. But we're just so impressed with you Jews. We want to make a peace treaty." So they make a peace treaty. Shortly thereafter, Joshua finds out that they live not too far away.
Right there, right.
So he realized he's been had. So they had a conference that him and the generals decide what to do. So the generals said, they deceived you. You made a deal with them, but they deceived you. Joshua said, yeah, but we made a deal. They said, that's not a deal. If it's a deception, it doesn't count. Joshua said, you're right. However, we are held to a higher standard. Even when they deceive us, we have to live up to our deal because that was the promise that we made. So Joshua let them all live. He did put severe restrictions on them, like he sort of condemned them to being water carriers and wood choppers, so that they became like an identified, they're the water carriers and wood chopper people, and no one should ever get involved with them. But he did leave them alive because you're supposed to aspire to a higher standard. Even in war. Even in war. And even though that was the war to conquer the country, and Joshua had been told, anyone that isn't willing to live under you, they die. Now, we got a new situation. The new situation is, and there's another type of war, which we have, which is called a mitzvah war also. Conquering Israel is called a mitzvah war. Right. The mitzvah war is when they're trying to kill you. It's a mitzvah to defend yourself. You're not supposed to allow people to kill you. Right? That's a sin to allow people to kill you.
Well, something's wrong. You must not be loud enough. The rest of the world's not agreeing with you here.
Right, yeah.
I mean, they're shooting rockets into Israel every day. People are dying, and the rest of the world says we need to boycott Israel. So
right.
something's wrong with this.
As a matter of fact, the only person, the only world leader that I think really came out and squarely behind Israel, or the first one that did for sure, maybe others have since, but the first one was a guy named Putin in Russia. And he actually said, like,
I
if
saw
they're shooting
that.
missiles at you, you got to.
I think he understood it pretty clearly.
Yeah, he said if they're shooting missiles at
Well,
you,
no,
you gotta.
sadly, I don't think the United States has yet given any kind of okay to this thing
No,
here.
I don't think the United States has
That's
gotten
that's a
that
first,
at
but
all.
yeah,
No,
yeah.
no. But anyway, so they don't really have to do all this knocking, bomb knocking,
Right.
and doing cell calls
Right.
and leaflets. They don't have to, but they're doing that anyway. Okay, which is nice because we do aspire to a higher standard. Nonetheless, when the time comes, they got to go fight. Up until now, this has been the real interesting point. Up until now, the Muslims talk a lot about holy war. The Jews don't talk so much about holy war. They don't like to take that angle. But what's been happening very subtly in Israel over the years? There's been
Right.
kind of a sea change because the religious people who are living in Israel out of a sense of religious motivation,
Right.
they believe in Israel as the place that God wants them to be. So they believe that they're living there because they're doing God's will. There are a lot of Jews that live there who are totally secular, and they don't think that they're there because it's God's will. They just think they're there because maybe the rest of the world wouldn't give them a place, because of the Holocaust, because of whatever
Right.
their reasons are.
Right.
But they think they're just there because they're there. Now, the truth is, I'm not sure why they stay there, because it's kind of a bad neighborhood.
It's not the safest place,
Yeah,
no.
But if you're religiously motivated, it makes a lot of sense. Well, anyway, a lot of religious soldiers have gotten into the army. And over the years, they've moved up through the ranks. Once upon a time, the Israeli army was like a bastion of secular thought. They
Right.
came from the secular kibbutzim, is where the whole army military corps came from. Ben-Gurion, who was extreme secularist, had very strict standards, and only the most secular of guys were in the army, and the army was conducted in a very secular way. Well, things have changed a lot over the years. So, I have a letter here. I have a letter.
Right.
And this letter was released just recently, 9th of July, 2014.
Okay.
That's pretty recent, right?
Last couple. Yeah.
And the man who writes this letter, his name is Ofer Winter. Ofer Winter. Ofer Winter happens to be the chief commanding officer of the Givati Brigade. It's his soldiers that are now camped outside of Gaza. They're the ones that are going
They're
in.
the ones that are going in. Okay.
He's a general. He's pretty high up. It's his brigade, and he released a letter to his soldiers. And this is on July 9th, so he said he's releasing a letter, and he's trying to, inspire them.
Right.
So this is what he says. This is his letter. I'll read it to you. It's not so long. A great privilege has befallen us to command and serve in the Givati Brigade at this time. History shows us to be at the forefront of fighting the Gazan terrorist enemy, which curses, blasphemes, and abuses the God of the battles of Israel. Now, that is a direct quote from King David when he was going against Goliath.
No.
King David said, this guy is blaspheming the God of Israel, because Goliath came out and basically was just spewing. And David was a Philistine, and the Philistines are they lived along the coast in a place that we now call Gaza. A bit north of what we call Gaza too, in Ashkelon and those places. But that's where they live. Same place. Okay, so this is a direct quote from King David.
Right.
He says, "We are prepared and trained for this very moment, and we accept upon ourselves this task and the mission with complete humility. And we are prepared to take risks and give our lives to protect our families, our nation, and our homeland. We act together with determination, strength, initiative, and subterfuge, and we strive to engage the enemy. We will do anything to accomplish the mission in order to wipe out the enemy and to remove the threat from the nation of Israel. In our brigade, we do not return until we accomplish the mission. We will act and do everything we can to bring our soldiers back in peace, while using all means at our disposal and all power that will be required. I trust you, each and every one of you, that you will act in the spirit of the Israeli fighters who go before the camp of Israel, the spirit called Givati. That's the name of their brigade." Then he says something that I've never heard an Israeli officer, certainly not a general, ever say before. "I raise my eyes to the heavens and call with you, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one.
Wow. Yeah.
The Lord, the God of Israel, please make us successful in our paths, which we are about to take to fight for your nation Israel against the enemy who blasphemes your name. On behalf of the IDF fighters, especially the fighters and commanders of Givati, make it so it will be fulfilled for us the verse that says that the Lord your God walks with you to fight for you against your enemies, to save you, and let us say Amen.
Well,
That's in general.
Not in the last 60 years of you've heard that, no.
Now, I'm thinking this is, and he goes on to say the last line is, together and only together we will win. I'm thinking he's viewing this in a very religious context. This guy, this general, Ofer Winter, he looks at things from a very religious perspective. And he is going to fight. He says, I'm going to fight, and I've got a mission. I've got to protect my family. I've got to protect our women and children. I've got to protect our country. And we're going to do what we have to do. Now, it would seem to me, of course, that if they ascertain that they protected their country, like, for example, if missiles would stop coming over,
right,
then they would say, okay, well, I guess we've protected our country, and then they would probably stand down. But this guy is not, he's not really looking to foreign powers. He's not really looking to kill the enemy. He believes that he's going out and God's going to guard him and protect him and bring him success to bring safety to all of their people. This is a very, very different fight. In my humble opinion, once it's turned to this and people are approaching it on this level, I think that the people in Gaza are going to be in trouble. They're going to be in big trouble.
I would think so, too. And that's actually interesting. Now, let's... any protests about this?
Yeah.
Okay.
For sure.
I want to know that clean.
Guess what? Okay.
The rest of the pages you have here are the protests.
Okay. So, of course, this letter went public. All the newspapers, it was sent to his troops, but of course everyone picked up on it. It showed up in all the newspapers all around Israel. Okay, I've got a picture there. It's the original, like the original document on the letterhead and all that,
Right.
But, yeah. So, of course, depending on whether you got a leftist newspaper or a rightist newspaper.
Right.
So the right-wing newspapers all going finally somebody gets it.
Right.
Right. Left-wing newspapers is he doesn't understand that this is a free society, and as a representative of the government, he has no right to bring God into this.
Don't bring God into battle. That's never happened before.
Right. And he says his soldiers don't want to be hearing about God right now. I'm thinking They
probably do.
Yeah, I'm really thinking that if I am a soldier about to go into battle. I hear that the officer is invoking God to help us. I'm not so opposed to that. I mean, even if I'm a secular guy, I'm not so opposed to that.
Isn't it true there's no secularist in foxholes?
Right, exactly. But I mean, there's a lot of chatter, and there was all the discussion after, in Haaretz and all the left-wing newspapers, they just went berserk, and how could he be doing this? How could he say this? And what has become of this army? And it's
that's it. When Joshua was going into Battle of Jericho, they must have Haaretz must have been writing articles there as well.
I think actually when Joshua was going into battle and anyone spoke up like that, I think that was the last thing they ever spoke.
They didn't survive as well.
They found all the guys that made those comments on after the article.
The comment, right.
They tracked all them down.
They didn't do as well or fare as well.
Yeah.
I think Lincoln did the same thing in the Civil War as well, so it wasn't that carried over. Yeah. But that's actually very interesting because you don't hear of much of the religious calling nowadays with Jews going into war. I mean, probably since the Hellenistic wars is probably the last time you heard that.
That's right.
And not even since then. So
right. So I think my feeling is that this is that when you're motivated like this, like he says that history chose us to protect our families, our nation, and our homeland. The Israeli army feels that it is protecting itself. It's not trying to conquer countries or trying to oppress other people, but it feels that it's going to protect itself. And, when you feel that you have to protect yourself, it really doesn't matter what anyone else tells you. If you, I don't care if someone says, use restraint or think about the other guy. No, if somebody's hurting my family, my kid, I just get out there and I do whatever it takes to stop that. Whatever. And I don't care what everyone else is going to say,
No, it is an amazing thing, and I know it's kind of broadening the topic here a little bit, but it makes you think. Here you have the Israeli army, obviously, and I think that the guy couldn't have said it any better. Oprah Winfrey, whatever it was. He couldn't have said it any He couldn't have said it any better. I mean, but you look at it, and it seems so logical. When you think the entire world would say, these people, obviously, they're protecting themselves. Missiles are coming in the whole world, and this is how the Jew handles his religious wars. It sounds very noble, and it sounds the way you think the rest of the Western world would agree to. On the other side, you clearly have the way the Muslims handle the religious war. We're going to kill everybody. And we're going to kill your children. We're going to kill everybody indiscriminately, and that's what we're going to do because you have no right to be here. We'll kill you. And still, then you look, and the entire world says, well, this is just two different sides of a fight, and these poor Arabs, they're being abused, and it's apartheid, it's whatever. Doesn't it make you think that something is going on in this world? I mean, including the U.S., the president, everybody here. How could people not clearly see the distinctions between the way the two people fight a religious war?
Notice, not one word is said about what they're going to do to the enemy. All the talk is, we will act together, determination, strength, leadership, to engage the enemy. When they engage the enemy, what are they going to do to him? Right? He says, in order to wipe out the enemy, remove the threat remove a threat from Israel. We will not return until we accomplish our mission. They want to remove a threat. Is there any word? Did you ever see the blood of the enemy mentioned?
No.
Until
flowing
your blood
through the
will
river,
be running in the streets,
right.
And wait until blood. You'll be bathing your children in your blood, and da 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 da.
So how then again do you explain the civilized world, the Western world, the United States administration, the government? There's protests all over the world. We're not going to use Israeli products. I heard I think it was even the Presbyterian Conference of America. They're going to boycott all Israeli products. I don't understand. And there's got to be something else going on here when you see it's clear. There's a clear difference here.
Right. And I actually believe that that Israel has in the past brought this on itself.
How's that?
Because Israel has refused to recognize itself, its place in history, and its mission. Perhaps even its right to exist, its right to be. It seems as though Israel views its right to exist based on the consent of all the other countries of the world to allow it to exist. And, we got a long history of that, so I understand why that has been. We've always lived really at someone else's largesse for centuries upon centuries. But it seems as though these people are saying we live at God's largesse. If God wants us to be here, we're going to be here. And he thinks that he's doing God's will. And when he does that, he doesn't really care too much about what the rest of the world's going to think.
When we be taking the other side to it, obviously God's will in the Torah is that we not just take the land of Israel, but we should be where the Dome of the Rock is. We should be, actually the borders of Israel should be a lot bigger than they are right now. Right. There shouldn't be any Arabs in the land of Jericho. There shouldn't be any Arabs. There should be Jews in the land of Jericho. We should be on top of the Temple Mount. So
right.
Where do we go from there?
That's a really good question. That is really a debate within the Jewish world as to what extent we Jews should be controlling the land of Israel. Because a lot of people feel that that's for messianic times. Let God send his Messiah and then we'll take over. But I think everyone not debated within Israel, everyone agrees that we do have a right to live. We do have a right not to be bombed. Right? We have a right to protect ourselves and to live. Maybe it's questionable. Should we be taking over the Dome of the Rock? Should we be setting up a second temple? Maybe some Jews say yes. Maybe some Jews say no. Very debatable. lots of questions about that. Do non-Jews have the right to live in Israel? Well, a lot of people, most people would probably say yes. Maybe some people would even say no. I don't know. But the bottom line is everyone agrees that in this case, this is a matter of life and death, of protecting your own life. And when you're protecting your own life, you have to do whatever it is you have to do. And anyone that says that the Jews don't have a right to live, you don't have to listen to that.
And that's fair enough. And
when you stand up for yourself, this is the whole problem with the bullying. The best way to stop bullying is to teach kids to stand up for themselves. And when people stand up for themselves, other people don't bully them.
So Middle East peace, you go back to like what Golda Meir said, either when the Arabs love their children as much as they hate the Jews, then maybe we'll have peace. Is that where we're going there?
Right. The current version of that is a spokesman for the Ministry of Defense in Israel just had that line just a few days ago, that we use our weapons to protect our women and children, and you use your women and children to protect your weapons.
That's actually, he said it actually better. So I guess when Hamas stops telling their children and women to stay,
right,
and ignore the phone calls and the knock bombs or whatever you're calling it, then maybe we might have peace.
Right.
So just because I think we shouldn't go before we get this, let's just have a real quick strategy session here because I think everybody wants that. Should then this general and the other generals go into Gaza? Obviously, you go into Gaza, there's going to be some Jews that might die here,
right?
And none have died yet, and this is going to be tough. Obviously, we can do this if we were a little bit more careless with our bombing. We could go take out these targets. Is it worth sending in right now today our troops, these troops, into Gaza for once and for all, take out Hamas, or at least the strength of Hamas?
Yeah. So that's whenever those type of questions come up. That's a military question, and the experts have to decide whatever will more effectively do the job.
But if you don't do it now, you're going to have to do it later. So I mean,
if it's going to be done more effectively by putting in ground troops, then that's what should be done. Even though you're going to risk more people, and soldiers' lives will be at risk because it's a brutal, as you can see. Like this is what you're talking about.
That's right.
Clearing out a place like that.
Tough city. I mean, closed buildings everywhere, right?
Closed buildings, and each one of those buildings has a zillion nooks and crannies and basements and attics and closets. And you got to go through each and every one of them, one by one by one. It is so difficult to do that job, and people's lives as soldiers are going to be like way at risk to do that. But it has to be decided. It's a military decision that has to be made, but the decision should be what will most effectively do the job. But the decision should not be, in my mind, what will do the best while mollifying world opinion.
Which there is some people have this opinion.
Right.
And one more quick military question, because this is important too. So was it worth it in 2005 going out there and taking all the Jews out of this land in Gaza and bringing it? It's considering the day number 2 rockets started flying in Israel, probably about 8,000 rockets since then. Was that worth it? Giving Gaza to the?
I don't know.
I think Barack Obama would say yes. You need to give them more. But what would you say?
Driving over here, whenever you see a map of there's one place called Khan Yunis. You'll see it on the map. It's one of the big cities. A week before they evacuated, I was there.
Really?
There was Neve Dekalim, which is a town on the other side of the wall from Khan Yunis, which was the Jewish town on the other side of that. And I went there to visit people, and I spoke to them, and I just wanted to tell you, it was beautiful. It was beautiful what they had built. It was just amazing what they had accomplished. I went to the guys to the hothouses where they were growing all this vegetables, and they had processing plants.
How's that looking now? I wonder.
Yeah, the beautiful synagogues, as I said, and when you talk about a turnkey operation, they could have walked in and just operated the businesses. The crops were already grown. They just could have operated.
They could be living great right now.
And they could have turned around and sold it to the Jews. They could have sold it to the Jews who were buying the stuff, and the Jews would have bought it from them. Instead, they just wrecked the whole place. It was so beautiful, and they wrecked the whole place. And now here we are. At the time, I felt it was tragic. It was, it wasn't like a surprise. Like say, well, how did it turn out? What do you mean how did it turn out? Whoever thought it would turn out any differently?
No one.
You know,
No one.
You know, you can't say that it's not even worth an "I told you so," because it wasn't even a question. There was you know, it was a question, and you thought you were right and he was wrong. So then you go, "I told you so," because it turned out I was right.
But you already
It
knew.
wasn't even a question.
Wow. All right. So I guess that's pretty much answers that non-question there.
Yeah.
Pretty sad, and I guess you know, see how this one turns out.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah. All right, interesting topic. I'm sure there's a lot more discussion to be had on this, and
Right.
we might even be talking about it next week. Who
Well,
knows?
you know, our hearts and prayers are with General Ofer Winter and the Givati Brigade and all the other Israelis who have a big job in front of them.
Amen, and I agree. All right, well, we'll see you next week to update you on Jeff and the Rabbi.